So we're going to try and animate a logo that we made. Now in this case, I made this logo here, and it looks a lot like the logos we made in the past. It is a little bit different here. Instead of it being unified as one sort of solid thing, we've got this created in such a way where we're basically just separating all the different sort of disparate parts by different layers. So each one of these little things, besides the text box and the text itself, these are all on different layers here. So I've got my little solid circle, my inner ring, outer ring, all that stuff. So all this stuff should be hanging out here on this little file that you downloaded here. So open up Adobe After Effects, and let's just create a new project here. And we're going to make a new composition, and just let's set this up here. So just in case you forgot, Adobe After Effects works in terms of composition. Essentially, you are given a set of parameters that you can sort of alter and adjust and stuff. So in this case, I'm going to call this one Animated Logo, and I'm going to set my preset here. I'll just make it into an HD 1080, 30 frames a second right here. So we've got, so it should be, actually that's fine. HD 720, HD 1080p 29. Here we go. Wait, no, 1280. 1920. Here we go. So 1080 29.97 HDTV, right? Which is going to be the 1920 by 1080, right? So 16 by 9 aspect ratio, square pixels, 30 frames a second, full resolution. Let's actually change it to about a quarter here. Actually, we'll have like half, just so it'll be a little bit faster. In this case, let's make it only about 10 seconds. So 10. So we've got, all right, here we've got hours, we've got minutes, we've got seconds, we've got frames. So we want to make sure that we have our time set to 10 seconds here. And the background color is basically just something, it's nothing, it's your alpha channel, it's your transparency. So you want it to be something other than like this color here, because in this case you won't be able to see your bounding box. But if you make it something like, blue, then you might get the feeling that you're working on blue. So I usually make it sort of a neutral gray, just to make sure I'm aware that I'm working on nothing. So this is just nothing right here. And it'll show up here. You can scroll down with the mouse, with the scroll wheel to kind of zoom in and zoom out. And let's go over here to our window and go to workspace and click on default. Default will give us a series of options that we can kind of work with in order that we can kind of animate this properly here. Okay, so with this right here, let's make sure we've saved this as in a certain spot here. So I'm going to go File, Save As, just so I know where it's being saved to. Downloads here, so I'll save. Okay, actually, I'll leave that alone for now. Just make sure you save it in a spot where you know where it's at. And let's open up Adobe After Effects. Let's go to our downloads here, and let's just drag this in. Animating logo. Let's drag this in, and we want to make sure that we're dragging it into this little area here. It's this project, and we're dragging it in to our animated logo composition. So we want to have this. We want to make sure this is a composition, and we want to make sure our footage dimension is set to document size. That way, they're all the same size because they're all going to be set to be 1920 by 1080. So in this case, you can just drag all these. It doesn't matter what order they get dragged into because they're all the same, right? And at this point, we're just going to leave this red. And obviously, if you made your background red, you might want to change your background to something else. And you can change that background by going to composition settings, and then adjusting your background. So if it's like red, you can't see anything, you may want to, not do that, right? So I'll make this, gray here. Okay, so with that being said, let's just highlight, let's just hit the letter P on the keyboard, which gives us our position keyframes here. So basically, position keyframes, After Effects works in such a way that you basically give it information. So for instance, I'm going to give my position of, say for instance, this whole thing, I'm going to have everything move in at the same time. I'm going to hit the little stopwatch here, which is going to put a position keyframe for this one, and I'm going to put one maybe like a quarter of a second later. So I'm looking for like over here, this is 30 frames a second, so a quarter of a second would be about like 6 frames a second, maybe 7 frames a second, so like maybe 7 or 8. And so it's like 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. So yeah, I'm at 10 frames in maybe. That should give us something. Anyways, I'll make a little keyframe by hitting this little diamond right here. Now let me show you what's happening here. Once I have these two keyframes, essentially what happens is I can actually put this in between here, so 5 and 10, so somewhere like 7 or 8. I'm going to here, and on my position, I'm going to look over here. This is my X position, right? And this is my Y position right here. So now with my Y position being down like that, it's going to kind of rise upwards. Now I'm going to undo what I just did, and I'm going to select everything. I'm going to click once, and I'm going to hold down Shift and select everything here, and I'm going to hit this little stopwatch. It's going to put a keyframe for everybody, and then I'll do the same thing here. I'll go into like 7 or 8 keyframes in, and I'll just hit another keyframe there, and then I'll go back to the beginning, and I'll just drag this down, which is going to get have everything come down at the same time, right? Okay, so that just raises this up. All right, so with that done, what I will do is this. I'm gonna see if I can't. Okay, so I can see everything here. If you're not sure you can see everything, you can always drag this up. I'm gonna just select all these little keyframes down here. I'm gonna right click on them, go to right click on the actual keyframe itself, go to Keyframe Assistant and click on Easy Ease, and watch what happens when we do that. It sort of like, slows down a little bit and has a little extra motion to it. Okay, so with that being said, let's see if we can do some different things to the different shall we say, I don't know, elements of this. So let's I'm going to drag the text up to the very top. So I'm going to have that be the first thing that arises. I'm going to highlight everything else here, and let's hit the letter T on the keyboard for opacity. Opacity, of course, being how clear it is. And let's set everything here except for the text. We'll have the text arise, right, and then we'll have everything else be totally see-through. So I'll click right here again. Just to have a keyframe hanging out there, and then we'll maybe like drag this in, say for instance, into their, say for instance, 7 frames, so maybe towards like 15 frames a second, 15 frames in, and hit this little button here, which gives everybody a keyframe, and we'll just hit this little arrow that says back 1 keyframe, and then we'll hit this, make this to 0, right? So if you look right here, we've got essentially it's going to fly in, right? And let's go ahead and just take this keyframe out, just delete all this, and all right, cool. All right, so it comes in, and then everything fades in below it. Now, I want maybe to stagger this. So what it will do is we'll just select these one by one, or in this case, we'll have 3 of these, and we'll just put them one after another, and we'll just drag them through. And if at some point, so this ends at 5 seconds in, I'm going to hit this little arrow, this little mountain icon here. That's going to let me zoom out and let me see what I'm doing here. So now we can kind of see this. Right, so they all kind of fades in, right? So depending on what you want to fade in first, in this case, I have my text come in first. Maybe I want to have my solid circle come in first. So I'm going to drag this in. And maybe I want to have my inner ring, and then outer starburst come in. So we'll just have those be in this order. This is probably a good order right now. And I'll just drag this back. Okay. Depending on what order you place them in the very beginning, it also kind of like, so let's take a look at this. Okay, cool. All right, so let's do this. I'm going to click on this here solid circle here, and I'm going to do a number of things. Let's go over here to our first keyframe. So this is where it's fading in. I'm going to actually have it fade in, and I'm going to have it grow as well. So let's click over here, and let's click on the letter letter S for scale. And let's click a little, shall we say, stopwatch for that. And I'll go forward to, say, for instance, like another quarter of a second here. And I'll make another keyframe here. And I think what would be fun would be to, say, for instance, have it grow, like shrink, like from, like, say, for instance, totally flat. So I'm going to uncheck this little bar there and kind of, like, shrink this down until it kind of disappears here. And I'll put this at 0. All right. Okay, so that's 0, and so let's see how this looks. All right, so that kind of like pulls it like that. Now I want it to like fade in and grow at the same time, so hopefully we won't see the growth, like, obscuring the motion graphics. So I'm gonna hit the letter U on the keyboard, which is gonna reveal both my position, scale, and opacity keyframes for this layer. I'll just drag these back and kind of line these up here. And so now let's take a look, see. All right, and so that's kind of fun. And while I'm doing that, I might even actually go to my rotation. Let's look here. So in this case, I want to say let's go to, let's put R on the keyboard for rotation. Let's hit little stopwatch here. Let's put -10, which is going to rotate it just a little bit. And then we'll go forward and have it once again be 0. So let's take a look, see at this. Actually, let's make it not -10, but yeah, let's hit -10. And so let's see how this looks. There we go. Okay, cool. All right, and so now it kind of sandwiches in there. That's kind of neat. All right, so once again, you on the keyboard, select all 3 of these, right-click on them, and then Keyframe Assistant, easy, ease. There you go. So let's take a look at this. All right, cool, fun. And let's do the same thing for this one. Let's have, it fades in. I think the inner ring probably is fine by itself. Maybe we want to, Well, yeah, we'll keep that there, and then let's do for the outer ring. Let's actually have that spin a few times. Let's have both of these inner rings spin a few times. So we'll hit R on the keyboard for rotation, and we'll click it once, and then we'll go forward to this next little keyframe here, and we'll click it again. This little arrow over there, and we'll hit it back. So like we'll have it end at 0 and begin at, say, for instance, 2. So it'll spin backwards. Let's see what happens with this. Okay, 2, all right, and so. Oh, whoa. All right, so that kind of goes a little nuts here. Maybe 1. Okay. So this is actually kind of interesting. The idea is that it's not actually centered to, so it's centered insofar as it's centered to, like, you know, the whole thing is centered, but because this one right here is actually centered, what we can do here is we can actually grab this thing. So let's actually do this number here. Let's actually right click on this and let's say create a shape from vector layer, which should give us a bounding box that's like kind of a little bit different here. Let's yeah, okay, so let's take a look, see. All right. Let's hit U on the keyboard. Okay. I want to say we could probably move our anchor point slightly. So let's click this little button over here and let's move our anchor point just a little bit up. So that should, oh no, okay, down some. There we go. So this comes in and then, okay, never mind. Okay, well, we'll just leave it at that. We'll just let it spin a little bit. And we'll do the same thing for the outer ring as well. We'll have it spin once as well. So R for rotation, and we'll have it come in. We'll put the little stopwatch there, hit U on the keyboard to get both those keyframes so I can see both of those and line those up. And once again, 0. Oops, put another keyframe here. And then we'll just back this up and put 1. And so this way it'll also spin, right? So we've got this spinning and then that spinning. Okay, cool. All right, so let's finish this up by just selecting everything and just right-clicking on all these keyframes. And keyframe assistant, easy ease. And let's take a look at the final product. Cool, right? That's a lot of fun. And if you wanted to, say, for instance, have some of them come in at the same time, like, you know, just mix them up, like, not necessarily at the exact same time, but kind of like have them stagger in their entrance and stuff, that could also be a thing that might be, you know, neat to see here. So let's take a look at this. The whole thing might last about 2 seconds. All right, so I'm actually going to lengthen out some of these animations here, just to make it easier to see. Maybe these last half a second or so instead of like a third of a second. Let's take a look at this. That's kind of fun. Okay, cool. All right, so what we'll do is we'll just save this as a .aep file, and you can go ahead and submit just the AEP file to D2L here and call it animating a logo, and press save. And this is a kind of basic logo animation. Now we'll get more into how we maybe, for instance, center in the rest of that stuff here, just to make this a little bit easier. But here, that's the long and short of it. All right, very cool. Can't wait to see you guys produce.